Um, how's things? So I hope you've been able to get out and find some morels. Sorry we weren't able to do as many forays as I would have liked. Morels are probably still up. I'm leaving on a vacation in a couple of days, so I can't hold any more forays. I tried to see if anybody had some free time to lead something, but so far not much happening. So anyway, I think most of you guys know what you're looking for at this point. Let's jump into this. So this is a short one. I haven't been reminding you guys to send me pictures. Plus, there's not many mushrooms about. So maybe we'll change this little segment up and get some new faces and do something different with this. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. So let's see. I exited this. Oh my gosh, this window is such. Okay.
Mitch, I've never seen a morel ever, and I've never tasted a morel ever. Can anybody tell me what the big deal is? What is the flavor of a morel? Come on, make me jealous.
It's hard to explain. It's earthy. It's not your classic button mushroom taste. It's very different. Sometimes when you're cooking them, it can have interesting seafoody type aromas to me. But it's definitely an earthier flavor. It's unique. It really is definitely different, and it would be hard for me to explain what it tastes like. Especially taste is probably very subjective. If anybody else wants to chime in on that. Now, you can't say you haven't seen them. Maybe you haven't seen one in real life.
I've seen an image of one. Yeah.
We found them on every foray that I've been on this year so far. Not many, but we've seen at least some. So everybody got to at least see them. Early on,
and we want an old apple orchard. Is that right?
Old apple orchards. I don't know of any old apple orchards, but yes, you can find them at old apple orchards. But if they're very old, you got to watch out for if they used some sort of arsenic pesticide, and then that might be accumulating in the mushroom. So you have to be careful in case if you are hunting in apple orchards. Mainly in our area, we look for tulip poplar areas with a lot of tulip poplars, in a pretty large area and almost pure tulip poplar. When it starts getting mixed with oak and things like that, it's not usually very productive. I have found them mixed like conifer tulip poplar and found some in areas like that. Of course, you've got your old elm trees. The ash trees can be good, but those tend to grow in the same areas. And so if you find a tulip poplar area, it's highly likely that you found a place that elms would like and ash trees would like as well. If you see some tulip poplars with some, say, sycamores growing along a riverbank, that might be a good spot to walk. Don't go too deep in the gullies. They can get drowned out. So, stay a little far, like out of the floodplain or something like that. But those areas tend to stay moist since they're right there by the water.
Thanks, Mitch.
Hope that helps a little bit.
For those of you who've never tasted a morel, because there are burn morels out on the West Coast, which we do not have here, and they come up in massive quantities, and there's been massive burning out west. You can check online for dried morels, and they're not terribly expensive. If you really want to taste one, you can order an ounce, and it's not going to cost you that much.
You can find them at Whole Foods or Mom's or sometimes even the Giant. I'm not sure the quality, but you can find them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm not doing that.
My kids give me morels for my birthday every year because they live out in California.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right. So jumping into this, This one submitted by Marilyn Mendel. You can see it's got this dark scales on the cap. You can't really tell what wood this is, but if you notice that it has an enrolled margin here, the gills tend to be kind of subdecurrent. It has a very scaly stipe or stem as well. This mushroom tends to be quite tough. It have white spore print, and the scales kind of get denser and larger towards the center of the cap. This is a pretty common mushroom. Apparently it is edible, but it can be quite tough. But this would have been conifer wood. So this is Neolintinus lapidius, otherwise known as the train wrecker. And that's because they've actually found this growing on railroad ties that actually had creosote in them. So it didn't care that the creosote was there. It was growing in the conifer anyway. And if that decayed the railroad tie enough, it could, your rails would get messed up, and this is why they call it the train wrecker. Sometimes the gills are more decurrent than this as well. Can be quite big and showy. Usually it has more of a ring, and there is one on the West Coast. I think it's Neolintinus ponderosa that doesn't have a ring, but it's supposed to be on the West Coast. So I don't know. All right, so April Wyman sent me this, and she said, hey, we were in Sanibel Island in Florida. We think we found a mangrove fungus. And I was like, maybe, because I've never heard of that. And I looked it up, and it does look like this is possibly a cylindrocarpon gall on mangrove. And so in Florida, apparently almost 100% may have some sort of form of this gall, and it doesn't hurt the tree. But in West Africa, don't know if it was a different species of cylindrocarpon, but it was decimating whole groves of these things. So, and they still don't know what the problem was, whether it was the conditions or whatever. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting, a little out of our area, but it was something new for me. So I guess you could kind of look at that and say, yeah, it's kind of like a mangrove chaga. Although I don't know that if it's toxic or not. So this one was submitted by Rick Silver. This is a pretty common spring mushroom. You notice the tan cap, the gills attach to the stem, so there's no zone here. They're not decurrent. They attach pretty much directly to the stem. They're brown. This is due to the spores being produced, because these would have a dark spore print. The cracked cap is probably more conditional. There is a species of this called Agrosebe dura, and that's known as the cracked cap Agrosebe because it does this so often. But this is probably an Agrosebe praecox, and I say cluster because it seems like there's a huge group of these that they aren't necessarily distinguished, genetically, if they are the same species or not, and they all look very similar. Often growing in mulch and things of that nature. All right, so Matt sent me a few photos, so we'll go through a few of these. So here you go, there's a couple of morels. The first one here is what you would call the tulip poplar morel. This is what they're calling Morchella diminutiva now. It's a smaller kind of this longitudinal pits and ridges. This is a black morel. This is Morchella angusticeps. They used to call this one Elata. They say the black morels can come up earlier. I found them both at the same time, but we did find black morels that were a larger size than the tiny little white ones on one of the first forays that we went on this year. Found in similar areas. Actually, that article about those guys growing mushrooms, they're actually growing black morels, which I thought was interesting because the people in what, 88 or whatever, that said they were doing it, or the 2000s, I can't remember what that recent, relatively recent, they had cultivated them and then nobody could repeat it. Well, apparently they were using a different species of morels that typically grows in mulch. Well, black morels don't grow in mulch. You know, some people say that they have a non-obligatory mycorrhizal association, and I guess these guys figured out a way to where they can just grow saprobically. One little tidbit from that article, they said that there's a conidial form, which is kind of like an asexual form that forms on the surface of the growing material, which I thought I had never heard of that, and I thought that was kind of cool. And apparently that can be that can kind of indicate how well they will fruit in culture. So that's just another thing to think about, like in the year when they're trying to send out their conidial form, if they don't do well, are they going to fruit less? You know, that kind of thing. So there's even more complexity here that we're getting into. Anyway, this is a nice find here by Matt. So this is actually one of the false morels. So he had suggested Gyromitra brunea, and I believe he's right there. I don't tend to find very many Gyromitras. You can clearly see this does not have pits and ridges. This is wavy, more brain-like. This typical mushroom tends to be kind of more saddle-shaped, where it usually has a couple of points that kind of come together. Could have 2 to 5 little points, making it more saddle-shaped. The inside you see here has chambers. It's not completely hollow. A lot of times, like the cap tissue will be fusing with the stem tissue and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll even see little splits right here, like this white coloration, where the tissue from underneath is kind of showing through. So I think seeing, you know, these guys, and you see those pits and ridges, you look at this guy, that's definitely lobes and waves, not pits and ridges. And then cutting it, boom, you know. Anyway, moving on. Another one by Matt here. I think you guys have probably seen this one before. We've had that in this show for sure. This is your scrambled egg slime, Fuligoseptica. This will eventually turn to like a tan color. Sometimes you'll see it growing on mulch too, and they call it dog's vomit slime. This little crust over here is a fun one to find. They call it giraffe spots, which you can see why. It's Piniophora albobadia. I believe this is actually kind of parasitic on the wood that it grows on. And you guys may recognize this. This is a really young, tender, fresh guy. This is actually chicken of the woods. This is Laetiporus sulphureus. When I was new to the club, I found this just like this growing all over a log, and I was like, I think this is chicken, but I was too scared. I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't contact anybody, and I left it all. I'd probably say I'd leave that for another day or two, and it'll start growing out, and you'll get a little bit more mushroom, although it is nice and tender at this stage. All right, well, that was it for me. So this last one actually is right over there. This is something I was trying to cultivate. So these busted up little crusty critters here are King Stropharia mushrooms. The asparagus bed is right in the sun, and they came up and immediately dried up and got all cracked and funky. And so they didn't do so hot. I actually have a bed further back here that you can't really see. Nothing's happening there, but it's not in the sun. I only took like a little handful and threw it in here just for the heck of it. So that, you know, hopefully this means good things to come. Although I'm about to leave on a trip, so I suspect if it rains again, I may come back and have little rotted stumps, but we'll see. Anyway, I ended up buying that spawn online. Got chip drop to drop me off a bunch of wood chips, and I've been mulching all over, and I've just putting some here, putting some there, and then I tried to create a bed, and hopefully if the bed does take, if I get more wood chips, I can just go grab a hunk of mycelium, stick it in the wood chips. Hopefully I'll have other king strafarias that look a little better than this one. Anyway, thanks everybody, and get out there if you can. I think there's still Morels coming up. I'll see if anybody else is able to do a foray this weekend, but like I said, I'll be gone. Anyway, take care.
Nice job.
Thanks, Mitch.